Jimmy. Jimmy. JimJims, son!
Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the JimJims channel. I am your host, JimJims, and today I have lost my mind. That's right, I went from fixing little old Toyotas and minivans to European luxury cars. This vehicle comes to me for $400, and it came from an apartment complex across town where apparently the owner of it, a young teenage girl, her parents bought it for her, and just a few months later she obliterated a mailbox and then hit a curb and blew out two passenger side tires and bent the front suspension. So they just wanted it gone. They couldn't figure out why it wouldn't start. It wouldn't even go into gear. Nothing, basically. And they told me, look, the apartment complex is going to tow it to the junkyard tomorrow. Just give a scrap price for it and it's yours. And I said, absolutely, I can do that. So let's walk around the gate here and take a look at her. I'm not a big fan of these Jaguars. I didn't even say what it was. It's a 2003 Jaguar X-Type with the 3-liter V6. I mean, there's not much I know about it other than it was owned by a teenage girl who wrecked it. You can see that the paintwork is less than stellar. It has been sitting in the El Paso sun since 2003. It does still have current registration and inspection. It has that classic Jaguar look with the leaping leopard, or you ever want to call it. Jumping Jaguar, I don't know. I know some people are going to get upset if I say Jaguar. You know, it's Jaguar, not Jag-U-is, but Jaguar. Or as Jeremy Clarkson calls it, a Jag.
You have a Jag.
So let's take a look around. You see it's got the alloys on it, obviously. It doesn't have a ridiculous amount of damage, but it has a good amount. It's tinted all the way around. It's got that classic rear Jaguar look to it. Again, with the clear coat basically gone off of it. Let's take a look at the interior. It is all leather with the wood. I don't even know if it's real wood or not, but we'll find out. There you go, there's my shadow, so you can take a look at my shadow. Again, all leather. Let's see if we can get into the back seat here. All leather with some garbage left on it from the previous owner. Let's take a seat down. I've already started doing some work to it, so I will throw that later in the video. See the screen? After the previous owner wrecked it, she got mad and scratched it with the key. So isn't that nice? Got a bunch of junk sitting in the passenger seat. There's my computer that I was using to diagnose it. Bunch of sensors in the center console. The sensor console. This thing has been torn completely off because of course it has. It does have a sunroof, which who knows if it works or not. Who cares, to be honest with you. I'm sure the horn works. Sure does. But yeah, it even came with the flip-out key fob that is brand new that the owner just paid a bunch of money to have replaced. Let's take a look at the reason I got it now, shall we? Because remember what I said, right? It was $400. There's the brand new tire that I had to buy for it. And you'll see why I had to buy a brand new tire for it. Ready? Dun 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 dun. It is smushed. Not ridiculously smushed. It's just a scuff on the fender. Or I mean a scuff on the bumper. A big fat smoosh on the fender here. Really just did a number on that fender. Awful. And the suspension is bent. Something in here is not going right. That's definitely for sure. I think I've traced it down to the shock absorber, or the strut, if you want to call it that, because it's a McPherson-style strut. If you can see here, it's kind of squished inward and leaking a little bit, so I would determine that's why the wheel, instead of sitting straight like this, it's like this. We're going to see if we can get away with just replacing a shock, and if not, we will go further into the suspension and replace other bits if we absolutely have to. So now that you've seen around the car, you know what I paid for it. Now we got to get to some of those repairs. It's got a number of repairs. It won't start. It won't move. It does have power to it. It has a brand new battery. It's in limp mode from what I understand, and I'm pretty sure I already know what's wrong with it. There's an inertia switch on this side of the fender that's probably been depressed after the accident. So we're going to take a look in there and see if we can get it to start. So we're in the Jag now, and I have my OBD2 scanner hooked up. I'm going to pull some codes from here and see what we get. It says that we have 4 codes. The first one is a P0121 throttle/pedal position sensor circuit range performance. So we already have the replacement throttle body for that. We'll go ahead and install it after this. We have a C1145. I don't know what that is. Probably generic, and we'll put it right here at the bottom of the screen. P1000, that's definitely a generic code for these Jags, so never you mind. And again, a C1145. So what we will do is go and replace that, you know, throttle body under the hood, and then I'll come back over here and erase these codes and see what we get. Now that I've read the codes that the car is displaying, the most prominent code is a throttle position sensor. This car has a multitude of what you would call throttle position sensors because it's a Jaguar, you know, all those weird electronics. It's got a throttle position sensor right here. It's got a drive-by-wire sensor right here, which is kind of like a throttle position sensor. And then inside the car, on the actual gas pedal on top, is another throttle position sensor. You can tell the codes, which ones they are based on the actual numbers, and it's telling me that this throttle position sensor has gone bad. Unfortunately, I don't have the little security bit that I guess Jaguar puts on here, and it's quite frustrating because I tried to get it off of here, and it just would not come off. A Torx bit, they told me a T20 Torx would remove it, and it did not. It just spins. And I tried it on this one, I tried it on this one, I tried it on all of them, so clearly that's not the size. So we're just going to remove the whole throttle body. I have a complete replacement one that I need to clean real quick, because look how dirty that is. I also picked up this connector, because it's been, you can't really see it obviously inside, but it's been redone with the gold tin plating or whatever they call it. They put the little gold pieces over the tin, and I don't know if this one has been done, so we may have to swap the connectors over, because that's a very common problem on these old Jags. As Jeremy Clarkson says, Jag. I can't unhear that. So let's get to swapping out this throttle body. I hate the clips that they use on these Jags. It's just not a normal, you know, screw style clamp or even a push style clamp. It's one of these weird ones. So you gotta get the screwdriver like right in there and then just sort of pop it. But it can be a pain in the ass. Yeah, like that. And the whole thing just sort of peels out like a potato peel. There. Sorry for any wind noise, it's a little bit windy today. I had to remove this thing, which I assume is some kind of resonator or airbox thing, who knows what it is. And then I had to remove this PCV valve hose so we can get to the actual throttle body bolts. They're 10mm bolts. And this thing is just sort of wedged underneath here, these little louvers. It's like a ram air thing, and it just bolts in all over the place. You can tell this was made in jolly old England. Yes, fuck the consumer. If that rat bastard tries to fix this car, he can go fuck himself. Stupid American Yank. That's basically what's going on here. So let me fiddle some more and see if we can get this throttle body removed. So I've got the old throttle body off. There's the new one, replacement throttle body, which I have cleaned. I just have to remove these two coolant hoses, but I decided to put this towel down so I don't end up in a position I'd justifiably rather not be in, you know what I mean?
Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in.
So hopefully we can get all of this switched over pretty quick. I also determined that this plug also had the gold plated contacts installed at some point, so that's a good thing. So after I changed the throttle body along with the throttle position sensor, still same thing, straight into limp mode. Wouldn't go faster than, let's say, 10 miles an hour. So I did some research on the internet, and this guy, a very friendly guy, came up with a solution. And he says the throttle position sensor, like I mentioned earlier in the video, is also located here on the top of the gas pedal. So I took apart the gas pedal, and I took apart these 5 screws, Phillips head screws, the only Phillips head screws on this entire freaking car, I might add, and cleaned the contact area and plugged it back in, and the error seems to have gone away for now. I'm not saying this is a permanent solution. What I am saying is that it seems to have worked, because before the car would throw itself like that into limp mode as soon as you started it. Now it doesn't do that at all. Secondarily, I also noticed the brake switch is just hanging down here, so we're going to have to take care of that. So let me go back up in there and bolt everything back up where it should be and see what we got going on. Before I did all the fiddling with the pedal, the car would go straight into limp mode and it would not accelerate. If I pressed on the gas pedal, it would just go not even anything above 1,000 RPM. So let's take this key here, little switchblade key that they gave us, and put it in this creepy ignition system. See everything come on. Usually there's 2 lights that light up here, and it says gearbox fault and engine management system, whatever fault. Oh, there it is, engine systems fault. Gearbox fault, yeah, those are the 2 codes I was having. See, if you press your foot all the way on the gas pedal, nothing happens. Literally nothing. So, the weird thing is sometimes if you shut the car down and then start it back up again, it'll just go away magically, but it's not doing it this time. So looks like we got to go back to the junkyard and get a gas pedal. What you're looking at is an assortment of sensors. We have a gas pedal position sensor, a brake switch, and a throttle body with a drive-by-wire sensor and throttle position sensor, all of which had to be changed just so this car would stop going into limp mode. Now the problem I'm having is that the gas pedal, the way it's designed on this one, is not the same as it's designed on this one. You can see it's way far back in there, and the pedal I had to take off because it just doesn't fit. We're going to see what we can do about that. I don't know if... I've tried taking the actual nut out of here that holds the gas pedal on the assembly, and it just will not come off. Let's be careful not to break this sun, whatever you call it, hole where sun comes through and blinds the driver. So now we can at least start the car and check that the throttle response is happening. Are you ready? So we check all the systems. So the good news is it's working, because before it would idle way up at about 2,000 RPM and it had no throttle response. So now if I take my foot down here and press on the gas pedal, you ready? So the vehicle's running, which it was not before. It does move. Those are the backup sensors, which it did not before. So, you know, we're getting closer to solving all the problems. It just says driver's door open at this point, so if I close the driver's door, it just tells me how much range I have left, and that's about it. Which is nice. We do have an ABS light on. I did clear the codes after replacing all those sensors, and so far nothing has come back up. Again, I can rev the vehicle. Could not do that before. So we're going to keep monitoring everything and see what lights come on and what lights don't come on, and then we can get to doing some more in-depth repairs that it desperately needs. It's finally time to tackle the suspension on this side. I'm expecting a couple of things to be bent. It doesn't look too bad. Obviously I replaced the wheel, so the wheel's fine. But I know something in the suspension is not right because the wheel sits at a crooked angle. So if we really look down here and take a look at everything, there's nothing that seems to be too serious. I do notice a rub mark from the tire here. And if we look here, the spindle has sort of bit into the shock absorber and pushed it inward. So we need to look into that. I don't see anything seriously bent though. The control arm doesn't appear to be bent. I can't really see at this angle. Maybe you guys can see better than I can, huh? I don't know. I definitely see an angle to everything just the way it's sitting right here. Somebody just did brakes and rotors on this car. That sucks. Also the key fob that they gave me, I found the receipt in the glove box. 2 weeks ago they replaced the key fob at $500. That's more than I paid for the whole car. That's unfortunate, man. That's these Jags for ya. Anyway, I think I'm gonna go ahead and call the strut here the main culprit of the bent angle. I don't see any other issues here. It's really hard to determine honestly without taking everything out, and I am going to be taking everything out, so let me just start looking at things and we can determine where we're going to go from there. What you doing over there, bud? You catching some bugs? Yeah, that's the bug catching boy right there, big fat bug catching boy. Anywho, so we've come back under here to the suspension area, and I loosened the lower strut pinch bolt to determine if the strut, you know, is solidly in place or not. And as soon as I did that, it dropped about ½ inch and let me see this giant crushed area of the strut. So you can tell that this strut was heavily damaged and took, I would say, 90% of the curb impact and bent the strut. That's why the wheel sits at an angle like this. So when I released the tension on the pinch bolt, it went straight like that, meaning that this strut and the entire assembly basically needs to be replaced as a whole. I don't really want to just replace the strut on the off chance that something else is damaged that I don't know anything about. But you can actually see the angle of it, not quite the angle that it should be. Unfortunately, this thing is kind of like one of those Chinese finger traps. It's a puzzle box. It's all sort of pressed together, so to get the spindle out, you have to remove the tie rod and the lower control arm bushing thing. And then, once you do that, I think you even have to push the CV axle in, and then you can drop the strut down and replace that. So, how nice of Jaguar. As you can see, we've been doing a little bit of work. We've got the hub exposed. I have the caliper and brackets off, the rotor removed. There's the 2 caliper bracket bolts I had to take off. I do have this bolt removed. I'm trying to get the tie rod pushed up out of there. It's kind of a bitch. This thing has been unbolted from here, so there's some wiggle room in there now. And the last thing I got to do is get this ball joint pinch bolt out of the way. That way I can lower the ball joint, and maybe I can get this spindle off of here. We're also going to have to replace this ABS sensor because I'm pretty sure it became damaged in the accident. So let me continue taking all of this apart. After another hour of hammering and using this spray called Superzilla Spray, come on there camera, the Green Wonder product, this stuff works a treat. You have no idea. I have not ever used, it's even better than PB Blaster, if you can believe that, at freeing stuck bolts. I have a whole gallon of it and I use it for everything. Not a sponsor. They kind of sponsored me in a way. They gave it to me, but they told me that I didn't need to review it. So it's mildly sponsored, alright? If you ever get the chance, pick some up. It's super expensive, but it works fantastic. Okay, so now that I've done shilling like Jay Leno's big fat Dorito shilling head. I'm wondering which guest it's going to be when Jay finally takes a pistol out of his jacket, puts it in his mouth, and blows his Dorito shilling head off his head. You can see here that I've removed the CV axle nut, big fat nut. Look at the size of that driver I needed to remove that nut. Big as hell. I was unable to remove the tie bar no matter how much I harangued on it. It just did not want to come off, and that's fine. We eventually did get the ball joint to come off, along with the CV axle to push back, so now this whole assembly is just loose. If you want to see this ball joint here, check this out. This is like when soldiers went to World War I or whatever and came back with shell shock. Check this out. Ready? Whoa, Skippy. I think I'm going to need a whole lower control arm. Personally, so I think we're gonna scoop one of those up. It's completely loose now, so all I have to do is unbolt it there and there, and it'll just slide right out. But boy howdy, that is not what you want to see when you're taking off a lower ball joint there. That must have made some racket. You can see we have lots of space now, and all I got to do is sort of push this down, and I will be able to remove the strut. Thank goodness, because this has been quite a journey, quite an annoyance, I should say. Now you can see the mess that I have created. It is quite a mess, and it's going to be quite a Jenga puzzle to put back together. Not looking forward to that even remotely, but definitely the strut is completely bent. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's at an angle, that's for sure. I am going to have to remove the upper strut assembly so I can plop the whole thing out. And for now I'm going to put this thing on some jack stands and put the wheel back over it so I can order some parts, because I'm going to need a lower control arm and ball joint for absolutely sure, and I'm gonna need a strut, maybe the whole assembly, maybe just the strut, and I can transfer the stuff over. I don't know. Everything else looks all right. Probably shouldn't be letting the tie rod dangle like that, but it was a $400 Jaguar, so hopefully I can get it all put back together without having too much time, effort, money, and impatience into it. Now that I've had the time to actually take the car apart and look more into the problems that we're having here, I've determined that we have 2 options, okay? Option number 1 is go to the junkyard and buy a complete corner assembly for this vehicle, which would include the strut assembly as a whole, the lower control arm with the associated ball joint, the tie rod and the sway bar end links, the ABS sensor with associated wiring, etc. So we would literally be transplanting the whole corner, passenger corner of the suspension onto this car. That would cost $95. Option number 2, go to rockauto.com and purchase a brand new lower control arm with a ball joint attached, obviously, a brand new strut assembly, and a brand new sway bar end link, and simply reuse the other components such as the spindle, the hub and bearing assembly, etc. So the only reason I don't like option 2 is because it hit a curb doing 25 miles an hour, and there, it could just be this much out of round that I just can't see with my eyeballs, and then I have to go back and buy a spindle, and I have to go to the junkyard anyway. Now, I'm actually leaning towards option 2 more, because although you get less parts for more cost, you get brand new parts, as opposed to parts that I removed from a 175,000 mile donor vehicle that are arguably worn out to begin with. I don't really want to transplant worn out parts onto a car that I want to properly rebuild and then align. It's not going to help for the alignment very much. So I think we're going to do option 2, and on top of that I'm going to go to the junkyard and get the ABS sensor and associated wiring, because mine is cracked. And then I'm going to get some other small parts, maybe like a strut mount or something, and just purchase the strut assembly from Rock Auto. I think that's the route we're going to go, partially because of financial reasons and also partially because I don't want to put a car back together that has unsafe suspension components. I'd rather have new components than used components. If an ABS sensor is used, that's fine. I have nothing wrong with that. Installing a used lower control arm, I don't think I can do that in good conscience. So that's what we're going to do as far as that goes. I am going to end the video here. This is going to be the end of part 1 because of a number of reasons. If I let it roll into part 2 or did this whole thing as one video, okay, we'd be looking at a 45-minute video, and my Ryzen 3 processor is not going to be friendly with that. That thing struggles as it is trying to upload a 25-minute video. I mean, I can watch the bar physically go backwards instead of forwards. Sometimes, I'm not even kidding you, it says 25 minutes to load, and I'll walk away and come back, and now it's 45 minutes, and now it's an hour and a half to load. And that's not including the processing that YouTube does and everything else. It's just, you know, I don't have the time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So we're going to be ending part 1 here, and part 2 will pick up in about a week, maybe 2 weeks from now when I have the car completely back together and nice and cleaned up. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And if you can, press the like button and I guess subscribe. I'm going to start doing the begging, okay? I'm going to start doing the e-begging, basically like a homeless internet bum, because I want to get up there in subscribers so I can continue to bring you this content. Remember how I told you in my last video my life's going to change? Well, I'm about to be expending some large money out of my ass, and I'm going to need some money to spend, let's say. So please watch my video, please. Thank you guys for watching. Seriously, I appreciate it. But I'll catch you in part 2. So see you guys in a little bit.